You're staring at your brokerage account on a Tuesday morning before work. The number says $24,847.63. After 3 years of grinding, skipping trips with friends, cooking at home when everyone else was ordering DoorDash, you're finally about to cross $25,000. You screenshot it. You don't send it to anyone, but you save it. This is it. This is the moment everything changes. 6 months later, you check again. The balance is $11,200. That trip to Portugal you couldn't pass up. The car down payment because your Honda was getting old. The kitchen renovation because you deserved something nice. You didn't blow it on anything irresponsible. Every decision made perfect sense at the time. And yet, here you are back below where you started, wondering what the hell happened. If this sounds like your life, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. What I'm about to tell you is something financial advisors don't mention, investing apps won't warn you about, and most personal finance content completely ignores. There's a reason so many people hit that $25,000 mark and then watch it evaporate. It's not about willpower. It's not about discipline. It's about something buried deep in your psychology that activates the moment your net worth crosses into what I call the panic point. My name is Orion Invests, and I spend way too much time studying why smart people make predictable money mistakes. If you're someone who's been stuck in this cycle of building wealth and then mysteriously losing it, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you out. What we're about to cover could save you years of frustration. Here's what nobody tells you about hitting your first $25,000. It's actually the most dangerous moment in your entire wealth building journey. More dangerous than starting with nothing. More dangerous than taking your first investing risk. Because at $25,000, something shifts in your brain that makes you want to destroy everything you've built. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to break down exactly what the $25,000 panic point is, why it happens to almost everyone, the science behind why your brain turns against you at this exact number, and most importantly, how to push through it so you can actually build real lasting wealth. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why you've been sabotaging yourself, and you're going to have a framework to make sure it never happens again. Let's start with a question most people never ask. Why do so few Americans actually build wealth? According to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the median American household has about $8,000 in savings. Not retirement accounts, not home equity, pure liquid savings. $8,000, that's it. Now you might be thinking, well, that's because people don't make enough money. And yes, that's part of it. But here's where it gets interesting. When researchers looked at people who actually did start saving and investing consistently, something strange emerged. There's a pattern that shows up again and again. A Fidelity analysis of over 35 million retirement accounts found that accounts starting from zero crossed the $10,000 mark after about 2.5 years of consistent saving. Then something happens. The same accounts that took 2.5 years to hit $10,000 often took another 3 to 4 years to get from $10,000 to $50,000. That's not a linear progression. That's a stall. But why? The math should work in the opposite direction. Compound interest means the journey from $10,000 to $50,000 should feel faster than $0 to $10,000. The money should be working for you. But behaviorally, that's not what happens. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that individuals who experience a financial windfall or reach a savings milestone are actually more likely to increase spending in the months that follow. Not because they need to spend more, because having money triggers something. And here's the specific number that keeps showing up. Across multiple studies on financial behavior, the range between $20,000 and $30,000 marks what behavioral economists call a threshold vulnerability zone. It's the point where money becomes psychologically visible. Think about what happens below that number. If you have $5,000 saved, that's emergency fund money. It's defensive. At $10,000, you're starting to feel stable, but it still feels fragile. Then you cross $20,000. And suddenly, something shifts. You start doing the math in your head. That's a used car. That's a decent vacation. That's half a wedding. Your brain stops seeing the money as a protective cushion and starts seeing it as purchasing power. A report from Bankrate in 2024 found that 56% of Americans couldn't cover an unexpected $1,000 expense with savings. More than half the country is one car repair away from financial stress. So when someone builds up $25,000, they've already beat the majority. They've proven they can save. But here's the cruel irony. That success becomes the very thing that threatens them. Because now the money feels spendable. And the entire consumer economy is designed to activate the moment you have something to spend. A McKinsey study on consumer behavior found that targeted advertising becomes dramatically more effective when it reaches people during periods of financial confidence. Companies literally know when you feel flush. They're watching and they're ready. This isn't conspiracy thinking. This is just business. When you hit $25,000, you become a different kind of customer. You're no longer pinching pennies. You're someone with options. And every algorithm, every ad, every salesperson is going to treat you like someone who can finally afford to say yes. This is what I call the $25,000 panic point. And once you understand how it works, you'll see it everywhere. Here's what's actually happening in your brain when you cross that threshold. The first mechanism is something psychologists call loss aversion amplification. You already know about loss aversion. The idea that losing $100 hurts more than gaining $100 feels good. But what most people don't realize is that loss aversion doesn't scale linearly. The more you have, the more painful potential losses become. When you had $2,000 in savings, losing $500 stung. But when you have $25,000, the thought of it dropping to $15,000 becomes almost physically uncomfortable. Your brain runs simulations. What if the market crashes? What if I lose my job? What if inflation eats it away? And here's the paradox. Instead of protecting that money, many people do the opposite. They spend it. Not because they don't value it, but because subconsciously, they want to eliminate the anxiety. If the money is gone, they don't have to worry about losing it anymore. This sounds insane, but research from the Journal of Behavioral Decision Making confirms it. When participants were given moderate windfalls, a significant percentage made choices that researchers described as anxiety-reducing spending. They converted the uncertain value of savings into the certain value of purchases. A TV you own feels safer than $2,000 that might disappear. The second mechanism is financial imposter syndrome. When you've grown up without wealth, when saving money is new to you, when you've never seen $25,000 in an account with your name on it, something strange happens. You don't feel like you deserve it. A survey from Worthy found that 72% of people who grew up in low or middle income households reported feeling uncomfortable or guilty when they reached financial milestones. They felt like they were pretending, like someone was going to notice and take it away. So what do you do when you feel like you don't belong in a certain bracket? You remove yourself from it. You buy things. You help people. You treat yourself. You return to a number that feels more familiar, more comfortable, more you. The third mechanism is social recalibration. When you hit $25,000, something happens to your social radar. Suddenly, you're noticing what other people have. You're aware that your friend just bought a new car. You're seeing your coworkers' vacation photos differently. You're thinking, I could do that now. But here's the trap. You couldn't really do that. Because if you spend $8,000 on a vacation, you don't have $25,000 anymore. You have $17,000. You're back in the vulnerable zone. But the social pressure doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like permission. You finally have enough to participate. The fourth mechanism is the most dangerous one. It's called premature wealth identity. This is when you start making decisions as if you've already made it. $25,000, you're not wealthy. You're starting. You're maybe 2 years of saving ahead of where you were. But the feeling of having money triggers identity shifts that don't match your actual situation. You start thinking, I can afford to take a little risk. You start saying, I've been so disciplined. I deserve a break. You start believing that you figured out the game and now it's time to enjoy the rewards. But you haven't figured out anything yet. You've just crossed the starting line. The people who actually build wealth, the ones who end up with $100,000, $500,000, $1 million, they all had to push through this exact moment. A financial planner described it like this. The first $25,000 is the hardest, not because of the math, but because of the psychology. It's the point where every part of your brain is telling you to stop. You feel like you've done enough, and you have this overwhelming urge to cash in the emotional reward of all that discipline. But if you cash it in, you start over. And most people who start over at 32 or 35 or 40 don't have another 3 years of discipline left in them. They're tired. They're frustrated. And they decide that maybe building wealth just isn't for them. That's the panic point. It's where the money becomes real enough to trigger your deepest financial fears and insecurities, all at the same time, in a way that makes spending feel like relief. Let me give you a concrete example. Meet Marcus. He's 29, living in Austin, Texas, making $68,000 a year as a project manager. He discovered personal finance content 2.5 years ago, got his act together, and started putting $800 a month into a brokerage account. By his 31st birthday, he had $26,000. Then, in the span of 4 months, here's what happened. His 2016 Civic needed new brake pads. Not a major repair, maybe $350. But Marcus had been eyeing a used Mazda 3 for months. The car was $19,000. He had the money. He'd earned it. He put $6,000 down and financed the rest. That same month, his buddy invited him to a bachelor party in Miami. Flights, hotel, dinners, clubs. Total damage, $2,100. Then his apartment lease came up for renewal. Instead of staying put, Marcus convinced himself he deserved an upgrade. His rent went from $1,450 to $1,950 a month. Let me show you the actual math because this is where it gets brutal. Marcus had $26,000.
After the car down payment, he had $20,000. After Miami, he had $17,900. And that $500 rent increase, over the next 12 months, that's another $6,000 gone. Money that would have gone into savings is now going to a landlord. By his 32nd birthday, Marcus had $9,400 in his brokerage account. 2 years of progress, evaporated in months. None of those decisions were crazy. The car was practical. The bachelor party was a friendship investment. The apartment was nicer. Each decision in isolation seemed reasonable. But that's how the panic point works. It doesn't hit you with one big stupid mistake. It hits you with 5 reasonable decisions that all happened after you finally had enough money to say yes. Now let me show you what Marcus's life could have looked like. If Marcus had held at $25,000 and kept contributing $800 a month for another 3 years, with average market returns of around 8%, he would have crossed $70,000 by age 34. At $70,000, something interesting happens. The psychology shifts again, but in the opposite direction. Researchers call this the wealth momentum effect. Once you see that your money is generating real returns, once you watch $5,000 or $6,000 appear in your account just from market growth, the idea of spending it becomes much harder. You're no longer just spending money. You're spending future money. You're spending the growth you were about to get. The opportunity cost becomes viscerally real. But Marcus never got to feel that. He stalled at the panic point. He spent down. And now he has to build back up, which means going through the hardest part all over again. Compare Marcus to Priya. Same age, similar income, also hit $25,000 around the same time. But Priya made one different choice. When she hit that milestone, she did something counterintuitive. She automated an increase. Instead of celebrating by spending, she increased her automatic transfer from $700 to $900 a month. She told herself that the reward for hitting $25,000 was committing to hitting $50,000. She locked the money in an account she couldn't easily access. 3 years later, Priya has $68,000. The same market, the same income, the same age, but completely different outcomes. Not because Priya is smarter or more disciplined, because Priya understood what hitting $25,000 does to your brain, and she built a system to protect herself from it. Here's what most people don't realize about the panic point. It's not just about money. It's about identity. When you're building toward $25,000, you have a story about yourself. You're the person getting their act together. You're the responsible one. That identity is your fuel. It's what keeps you saying no to the dinners out, the trips you can't afford, the upgrades you don't need. But once you hit the milestone, that identity gets confused. Now what? You've proven you can save. Does that mean you're allowed to spend? This is why so many people sabotage at this stage. They don't have a new identity to step into. You need to understand that $25,000 is not a finish line. It's a checkpoint. It's the point where you've proven you can play the game, not the point where you've won. And if you treat it like a destination, you will stop moving. The psychological shift that has to happen is this. Instead of seeing savings as deprivation, you have to start seeing wealth as freedom. When you're struggling, saving money feels like sacrifice. You're giving something up. You're saying no to experiences, to possessions, to status. But when you reframe it, when you see that $25,000 as the beginning of never having to worry about money again, the calculation changes. That money isn't a car. It's not a vacation. It's the foundation of a life where you don't panic when the dishwasher breaks. It's the start of being able to quit a job you hate. It's the difference between options and desperation. The wealthy don't think of money as spendable. They think of money as deployable. It works for them. It creates options. It buys time. And until you make that mental shift, you will keep converting your savings into stuff that depreciates. Here's another thing nobody tells you. The spending urge doesn't go away. It evolves. At $50,000, you'll want a nicer car. At $100,000, you'll think about a vacation home. At $500,000, you'll meet people with private jets and suddenly feel poor again. There is no amount of money that makes you immune to wanting more stuff. So the skill you need to build is not about reaching a number where spending is okay. It's about developing a relationship with money that doesn't require spending to feel successful. So what do you actually do about this? Here's the framework that works. First, create an artificial spending barrier. The moment you cross $25,000, move at least $15,000 of it into an account you cannot easily access. A high-yield savings account at a different bank with no checking account attached. A brokerage account where you'd have to sell positions and wait for settlement. Even I-bonds that lock up for a year. The point is to create friction between the urge and the action. Every study on behavioral economics shows that friction works. If you have to drive to another bank, log into a different portal, or wait 3 days for a transfer, you'll talk yourself out of most impulsive decisions. Second, increase your contributions when you hit the milestone. Not after you feel comfortable. Priya's strategy works because it hijacks the psychology. Instead of asking, what can I buy with this, you're asking, how fast can I get to $50,000? You're staying in momentum mode. The specific number matters less than the action. Increase by $100 a month, by $50, by something. The increase becomes the celebration. Third, write down what happened last time. If you've been through this cycle before, if you've hit $20,000 or $25,000 and watched it disappear, write down exactly what you spent it on. Get specific. Don't just say life happened. List the car payment, the vacation, the apartment upgrade. Then put that list somewhere you'll see it when the urge hits. This is called implementation intention. When you know your own patterns, you can interrupt them before they complete. Fourth, find an accountability partner who has crossed the $100,000 mark. Not a friend who's also at $25,000 and will validate your spending. Someone who has already pushed through. Ask them what they did differently. The research on financial accountability is clear. People who have regular check-ins about their money are significantly more likely to stay on track. You don't need a financial advisor. You need one person who's ahead of you and willing to tell you the truth. Fifth, recalculate your freedom number. How much money do you need to never worry about money again? Not to retire, just to feel genuinely secure. When you have that number, calculate how far $25,000 gets you. Usually it's about 10% of the way. That reframe matters. You're not sitting on a pile of money. You're 10% of the way to financial independence. Would you celebrate at mile 3 of a marathon? At the end of the day, this isn't really about $25,000. It's about who you're becoming. Every time you hit a milestone, and don't self-destruct, you're building something more valuable than the money itself. You're building trust with yourself. You're proving that you can handle more. You're developing the capacity to be wealthy, not just to have wealth temporarily. And here's what nobody tells you about people who actually become financially free. It's rarely the ones who made the most money. It's the ones who survive the panic points. The person who inherits $100,000 and spends it in 2 years is poorer than the person who saved $100,000 over 10 years and kept it. Because the second person has something the first person never developed: the psychology of wealth. Building wealth is not about math. The math is simple. Anyone can Google compound interest. Building wealth is about endurance. It's about pushing through the moments when every part of your brain is telling you to stop, to spend, to sabotage. You are not your impulses. You are not your spending history. You are not the version of yourself that panics at 25K and retreats to 10J. That version is just the default, the one that shows up when you don't have a plan. The version of you that pushes through, that hits $50,000, then $100,000, then true financial freedom, that version exists too. It just requires you to stop treating milestones as finish lines and start treating them as evidence that you're capable of more. The $25,000 panic point is real. It's not a character flaw. It's not a lack of willpower. It's a predictable psychological response to hitting a milestone that your brain doesn't quite know how to handle. And now that you know it exists, you have power over it. The next time you see that number in your account, you'll recognize the urge for what it is. Not a reward you've earned, but a test you need to pass. If this video helped you understand something about your money that you didn't before, hit that subscribe button. I break down the psychology of wealth and the traps designed to keep you from it every single week. Drop a comment and tell me what number you're pushing toward right now. I'll see you in the next one.